2 days after my brother drained every dollar I had and vanished, he called me screaming like someone had a knife to his throat. And the only thing I could think was, why is the person who ruined my life suddenly begging me to save his? My name is Lena Carter. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a billing supervisor at a large medical clinic in downtown Chicago. I've spent most of my adult life doing what I do best, staying calm, staying organized, fixing problems before anyone else even notices they exist. I handle numbers for a living. I catch mistakes. I prevent disasters. So, when I tell you that my own brother emptied my accounts in less than 20 minutes, I need you to understand something. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a family loan. This wasn't him making a mistake because he was stressed. This was a plan. And the worst part? I didn't see it coming because I never wanted to believe he would go that far. I've always been the responsible one in my family, the one who pays bills on time, the one who remembers birthdays, the one who checks in on our mother, the one who says it's okay even when it's not, because keeping the peace was basically my job since I was a teenager. My brother, Evan, is 2 years younger than me. He's the kind of man who can smile his way out of anything. He's charming, funny, the life of the party. He's also the kind of man who has never once lived with the consequences of his own decisions, not really. Because whenever Evan messed up, someone else cleaned it up. Usually me. And when I stopped doing that, he didn't just get angry. He got desperate. I didn't grow up in a house where people screamed and threw things. That's what made our family so confusing. On the outside, we looked normal, quiet, functional. The kind of family that waved politely at neighbors and brought casseroles to church events. But inside the house, there was an unspoken hierarchy, and I learned my place early. Evan was the sun. My mother orbited him, and I was the shadow that made the light look brighter. I was 12 the first time I realized it. Evan had broken our dad's old laptop, slammed it shut too hard, snapped the screen. When my mother found out, she didn't ask him what happened. She turned to me and said, "Why weren't you watching him?" I still remember standing there, holding my backpack, staring at her like I didn't understand the language she was speaking. I was a child. But I learned the rule that day. Evan's mistakes were never Evan's fault, and that rule followed us into adulthood. By the time we were in our 20s, Evan had developed a pattern. He would fall apart. He would panic. He would come to me with those wide eyes and that broken voice, and I would fix it. I paid his car insurance once, then twice. I covered a rent payment. I loaned him money for a job interview outfit. I co-signed something I shouldn't have. And every time I hesitated, my mother would say the same thing. "He's your brother, Lena. He's family. You're stronger than him. You don't want him to end up homeless, do you?" It was always framed like kindness, but it wasn't kindness. It was conditioning. The truth is, I loved my brother. I really did. And I kept believing that if I helped him one more time, he'd finally stand on his own. That was my mistake. Because people like Evan don't learn gratitude. They learn entitlement. And the year everything happened, the year my life cracked open, it started with something that seemed harmless. A favor. 2 months before the theft, Evan called me late at night. His voice was shaky, quiet, almost embarrassed. "Lena, can I come over?" I should have said no. I had work early the next morning. I was exhausted. I had been dealing with a new clinic expansion, 100 new patient accounts, endless billing errors, insurance disputes. My brain already felt like it was being squeezed. But he was my brother, so I said yes. He showed up with a backpack and that familiar smile, like he was trying to pretend everything was fine. But his eyes were bloodshot. His hands kept trembling slightly. And when I asked what was wrong, he gave me a half-truth. "Things with my roommate got bad," he said. "I just need a couple nights." A couple nights turned into a week. A week turned into him leaving his toothbrush in my bathroom and his dirty laundry in my hamper like he lived there. And somehow, without even asking, Evan slipped back into my life, like he had never left. He would sit on my couch watching TV while I cooked. He'd joke around, call me Mom too, like it was funny that I had spent my whole life cleaning up after him. And I'll admit it, there were moments where it felt almost normal, almost like we were kids again. Before the resentment, before the imbalance. That's how he got close enough. That's how he got comfortable. That's how he got access. Because here's what people don't understand about betrayal. It rarely kicks down the door. It usually walks in smiling, wearing a face you've loved your whole life. One afternoon, Evan asked if he could use my laptop. "I need to apply for a job," he said. "My phone keeps glitching." I didn't even think twice. I handed it over, then went to the kitchen to make coffee. I could hear him typing, occasionally muttering under his breath, pretending to be frustrated with the internet. When I came back, he was still smiling, still joking, still my brother. But something shifted in me for a second, just a flicker of instinct. The way he closed the laptop too quickly when I walked in, the way his eyes didn't meet mine for a moment. But I pushed the feeling away, because I didn't want to live in a world where I had to suspect my own brother. A week later, he left. He hugged me before he walked out, squeezed a little too tight, and whispered, "Thank you. Seriously. I won't forget this." I remember watching him step into the hallway and thinking, maybe this is the turning point. Maybe he's finally growing up. Maybe I can breathe. And then, 2 days later, I woke up to a text from my landlord. Rent overdue. At first, I thought it was an error. I rolled out of bed, still half asleep, and opened my banking app like I'd done 1,000 times. My checking account was usually predictable, rent money set aside, bills scheduled, savings untouched. But when the screen loaded, I blinked. Then, I blinked again. Because the numbers didn't make sense. My checking account balance, $12.46. My savings account balance, $0. My emergency fund, $0. My throat went dry. I refreshed the app. I closed it, opened it again. Same numbers. For a moment, I honestly thought I was dreaming, like my brain couldn't process it. Then I clicked into the transaction history, and that's when I saw it. Multiple transfers, back to back, amounts carefully chosen. Like someone knew exactly how to empty me without triggering immediate bank alarms. A new device logged into my account the night before. A new phone number added to alerts. My phone number removed. My email changed. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. And then, without meaning to, I whispered out loud, "Evan," because no stranger would do it this way. A stranger wouldn't know where I kept my money. A stranger wouldn't know my bank. A stranger wouldn't know the security questions. But my brother? My brother had grown up with me. He knew my first pet's name. He knew the street we lived on when we were kids. He knew the one childhood teacher I always used as a security answer because it was easy to remember. He knew me, and he used that knowledge like a weapon. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted him, "Evan, call me now." No response. I tried to breathe, tried to think like the professional woman I was, the woman who handled chaos for a living. But this wasn't a billing problem. This wasn't a spreadsheet. This was my life being ripped open. I grabbed my keys and drove to the bank so fast I don't even remember the streets. I just remember the pounding in my chest and the way my fingers kept going numb on the steering wheel. At the branch, I walked up to the counter and said, "I think I've been robbed." The teller looked at my ID, pulled up my account, and her expression changed so quickly it made my stomach twist. She didn't say, "Oh, it's probably fine." She didn't smile. She didn't try to reassure me. She just got very still and said quietly, "Ma'am, I'm going to get my manager." And in that moment, I knew this was real. This wasn't going to be fixed in an hour. And the person who did it wasn't some hacker hiding behind a screen. It was my brother. The one my mother had always told me to protect. The one I had fed and sheltered and forgiven. The one who had just erased my entire safety net, then disappeared like I meant nothing. As I stood there waiting, staring at the bank lobby floor, one thought kept looping in my head like a broken record. If Evan could do this to me, what else was he capable of? Because stealing money was one thing, but stealing someone's ability to survive, that was something else entirely. And I had no idea yet that 2 days later, he would call me screaming, because whatever he ran toward was about to swallow him whole. The bank manager led me into a small office with glass walls, the kind that was meant to feel private but still left you exposed to the world. I could see people walking past outside normal people with normal problems, while my entire life sat on a screen in front of her, reduced to a list of transactions and timestamps. She introduced herself as Miss Alvarez. Her voice was calm, practiced. She had the tone of someone who had seen panic before, who knew exactly how quickly money could turn a person into a trembling mess. "Lena," she said gently, "I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I need you to answer honestly, even if it's uncomfortable." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Did you authorize any of these transfers?" "No," I said immediately. "None of them. I didn't send anything. I didn't add any new device. I didn't change my phone number. I didn't—" My voice cracked, and I forced myself to breathe. "I didn't do any of this." She turned the monitor slightly so I could see. There it was, a clean, organized list. Almost beautiful in how precise it was. Transfer, transfer, withdrawal, transfer. Not random, not chaotic, not sloppy. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Miss Alvarez tapped one of the lines on the screen. "These were initiated from a device that logged into your account last night at 11:43 p.m. It's listed as an Android phone." My stomach turned. I didn't even own an Android. "I have an iPhone," I whispered. "I know," she said, and the way she said it made me realize something terrifying. She already believed me. She wasn't suspicious of me. She was alarmed for me. "And then," she continued, "your security settings were changed. Your alerts were redirected. Your email was updated. Your phone number was removed." I stared at the screen, feeling like I was watching footage of my own house being robbed in real time. Except the robber didn't break a window. He walked through the front door. "Can you freeze everything?" I asked, my voice shaking. "We already have," she said. "We locked your accounts the moment the teller flagged it. But I need to be honest with you. Because these transactions were done through your verified login credentials, it complicates the claim." Complicates. That word hit me like a slap. "So, what does that mean?" I asked. "It means we will investigate," she said carefully, "but we'll need documentation, and we'll likely need a police report. I'm not saying you won't get your money back. I'm saying this won't be immediate." My chest tightened. Rent was due, bills were due, my car payment was scheduled for the next day. I had less than $13 in checking and nothing else. I wanted to scream. Instead, I did what I'd been trained to do for years when patients were crying, when insurance companies were refusing coverage, when doctors were angry, when chaos hit. I forced myself to stay functional. "Okay," I said, voice low. "Tell me what to do." Miss Alvarez's eyes softened. She slid a folder across the desk with a case number written on the front. "Start here. This is the fraud claim. I'm also printing a transaction history with timestamps and reference codes. Keep every single page. Don't lose anything." She paused, then added something that made my throat go dry. "And, Lena, whoever did this knew you. They didn't just take money. They tried to lock you out." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She pointed to another line on the screen. "They attempted to request a replacement debit card to be mailed to a different address." My skin went cold. "What address?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer in my bones. She read it out loud. It was my mother's address in Ohio. I couldn't breathe. Evan had been planning this longer than I wanted to admit. He hadn't just drained my accounts and run. He had tried to reroute the entire system so he could keep using my name while I sat in Chicago thinking it was a bank glitch. My brother hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen my identity. I walked out of the bank with a folder of paperwork pressed to my chest like armor, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The winter air outside slapped my face, sharp and clean, and for a moment I just stood there on the sidewalk, staring at the cars passing by, trying to remember how to breathe. Then I called my brother again. Voicemail. I called my mother. She answered on the third ring, voice bright and casual, like I was calling to chat about weather. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" The fact that she could sound normal made something inside me snap. "Evan drained my accounts," I said. Silence. Then a soft, almost annoyed exhale. Lena. He took everything, I continued, my voice rising. Every account, savings, emergency fund, rent money. He changed my alerts. He tried to mail a replacement card to your address. Another pause, and then my mother said the words I will never forget for as long as I live. Are you sure you're not overreacting? I stared at the sidewalk. My fingers tightened around the phone. Mom, I said slowly, I am standing outside my bank. I am holding a fraud report in my hands. My accounts are frozen. I have $12 left. What part of this feels like an overreaction to you? Her voice dropped into that familiar tone, gentle, warning, the tone she used when she wanted me to behave. Your brother is going through a hard time, she said. You know he's been stressed. If you accuse him of something like this, you could ruin his life. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. He already ruined mine, I whispered. Lena, she said again, and I could hear it now. Not concern, not fear. Protection, not for me. For him. I need you to calm down, she continued. Maybe he borrowed it. Maybe he meant to pay it back. You don't know. I don't know? I cut in. He emptied my accounts in less than 20 minutes and disappeared. What do you mean I don't know? Her patience cracked slightly. Because you always assume the worst about him. That sentence hit harder than any insult. Because it was the final confirmation of what I had known my whole life but kept denying. In her mind, Evan wasn't a grown man committing a crime. He was a fragile boy who needed understanding. And I was the problem for noticing reality. I ended the call without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there. I stared at the steering wheel, breathing in shallow, broken breaths, trying not to cry. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Just 2 words. Don't panic. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Don't panic. As if he had knocked over a glass of water, as if he had borrowed my sweater, as if he hadn't emptied my life and walked away. I typed back with fingers that felt numb. Where are you? No response. I tried again. Evan, give it back. Still nothing. I sat there for a full minute, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear, like he was typing and deleting, enjoying the power of making me wait. Then his next message came through. I needed it. I'll explain later. I felt something inside me go very still, because that wasn't remorse. That was entitlement. That was Evan, still believing I existed to cushion his fall. And in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach twist with fear. If he could do this so casually, if he could steal from me and then tell me not to panic, then he didn't see me as his sister. He saw me as a resource, a bank account with a heartbeat. I drove home on autopilot, the city blurring around me. When I walked into my apartment, it felt different. Not unsafe in the way a stranger might make it unsafe, but violated in a quieter way. Because Evan had been here. He had sat on my couch. He had eaten my food. He had joked with me. He had hugged me. And somewhere in between those normal moments, he had been studying me, learning the patterns, watching how I unlocked my phone, listening to me talk about bills and due dates, not as a brother who cared, but as someone mapping out a target. I went straight to my desk drawer where I kept my spare checkbook and my important documents. The drawer was slightly open. Just slightly, but enough. My pulse spiked. I pulled it open fully and flipped through the folders. Everything looked mostly normal. But the little envelope where I kept my spare debit card, an old one linked to a secondary account I rarely used, was gone. I sat back slowly, my mouth dry, because Evan hadn't just taken what he could access easily. He had taken what he thought I might use to recover. He had covered his tracks like someone who had done this before. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and checked the closet where I kept my passport. Still there. But the fact that I had to check at all made my skin crawl. I spent the next hour changing every password I could think of. Email, banking, credit cards, work logins, everything. I called my credit bureau and placed a fraud alert. I froze my credit. I made a list of every account Evan might have touched. And the entire time, I kept thinking about my mother's address. Why would he send a replacement card there? Unless he had been planning to run back home, unless he thought Mom would cover for him, unless he knew, deep down, that she always would. By the time I finished, it was dark outside. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic below. My hands were cramped from typing. My eyes burned. I should have felt relief, at least a little. But all I felt was grief, because the theft wasn't the most painful part. The most painful part was realizing that if I called my family right now and said, "He stole from me," the first question wouldn't be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What did you do to make him do it?" I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my lap, staring at Evan's last message. I needed it. I'll explain later. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife even deeper, another text came in. This time, it wasn't from Evan. It was from my mother. "Please don't call the police. You'll regret it." I read that line 3 times. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'll help you." Not, "I'll make him fix this." Just a warning, a threat disguised as concern. And in that moment, I realized something with terrifying clarity. I wasn't just fighting my brother. I was fighting the family system that had protected him his entire life. And if I didn't break that system now, it would swallow me whole. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, and thinking about the way Evan had hugged me before he left. How tight his arms had been around me. How he had whispered, "Thank you," like he was grateful, like he was leaving with love. But now I knew the truth. That hug hadn't been affection. It had been a goodbye. And somewhere out there, my brother was spending my money, hiding behind my mother's protection, while I sat in the dark, counting down the hours until rent was due and my life officially collapsed. I didn't know it yet, but the next 2 days were going to get even worse. Because Evan wasn't done, he had taken my money. Now he was about to take something else. My peace. And when he finally called me again, he wouldn't be laughing. He would be screaming. By the next morning, my body felt like it had been wrung out and hung up to dry. I had slept maybe 40 minutes total, the kind of shallow sleep where your eyes close but your brain keeps running, replaying every conversation, every memory, every moment I'd ever trusted my brother. I went to work anyway, because that's what I've always done. I show up. I perform. I keep my voice steady and my face neutral. I handle other people's emergencies while mine bleeds quietly in the background. But the truth is, I wasn't really at work. I was trapped inside my own head, watching my bank balance hit 0 over and over again like a horror movie that wouldn't end. I sat at my desk in the billing office, surrounded by monitors and spreadsheets and patient account codes, and I kept staring at my phone like it might suddenly light up with a message that said, "I'm sorry, I'm bringing it back." It never did. Instead, at 10:17 a.m., my landlord texted again. "If rent isn't paid by 5 p.m., late fees apply." My throat tightened. I felt my hands go cold. The logical part of me knew I could explain, that I could ask for an extension, that I had never been late before. But the emotional part, the part that had been conditioned by years of walking on eggshells, felt like I was being punished for something I didn't do. I stepped into the hallway outside the office and called the fraud department at my bank. The woman on the line sounded exhausted, like she'd been talking to panicked strangers all day. But when I gave her my case number, her tone shifted. "Yes, Miss Carter," she said. "I see the report. We've frozen the accounts. We're still investigating. You did the right thing coming in immediately." "Is there any chance this gets reversed quickly?" I asked. There was a pause, and I could hear her clicking through screens. "I want to be honest," she said. "Because the transfers were initiated through verified login credentials, it may take longer. But the device fingerprint doesn't match your usual access. That helps. A lot." "Device fingerprint?" "It's a technical identifier," she said carefully, like she didn't want to overwhelm me. "It suggests this was not done from your phone or your laptop. And we also see that your alert settings were changed. That's consistent with fraud." I pressed my forehead against the wall and closed my eyes. "So you believe me?" I whispered. Yes, she said softly, but we still need documentation. A police report will strengthen your claim. My stomach sank. I had known this was coming. Miss Alvarez at the branch had hinted at it, but hearing it out loud made it real in a new way. A police report meant I was no longer dealing with this as family drama. A police report meant consequences. And the moment consequences entered the conversation, I already knew what my mother would do. She would choose Evan. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the glass window of the hallway. My eyes looked hollow. My face looked older than it had 2 days ago. I didn't recognize myself. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't my landlord. It was Evan. A new text, short and casual, like he was ordering coffee. Stop calling the bank. I froze. My skin prickled. He wasn't just running, he was watching. I stared at the message, my mind racing. How did he know I'd called? Was he still logged into my account somewhere? Was he reading my emails? Had he set up forwarding? The thought made my stomach churn. I typed back, hands shaking. Where are you? No answer. I tried again. Evan, you stole everything. You need to fix this. A minute passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, the 3 dots appeared, and his reply came through. I said I'll explain later. You're making this worse. Making this worse. Like I was the problem. Like I was the one who had taken something. I stood there in the hallway, staring at my phone, and something inside me shifted. Not into anger exactly, into clarity, because I realized something important. Evan wasn't panicking. Evan wasn't ashamed. Evan wasn't even sorry. He was annoyed. Annoyed that I wasn't staying quiet. Annoyed that I wasn't doing what I'd always done, absorbing the damage and smiling through it. And for the first time in my life, I understood that my brother didn't see my kindness as love. He saw it as permission. I went back into my office, sat down, and forced myself to finish the day. I answered emails. I processed claims. I smiled at coworkers. I laughed at a joke someone told near the printer. I did everything a normal person does. But inside, I was counting down the hours until I could go do what I had been avoiding. File the report. At 5:42 p.m., after I left work, I drove to the police station. The building was plain, beige, and fluorescent lit. It smelled like old coffee and paperwork. There was a small waiting area with plastic chairs and a woman holding a toddler who looked exhausted. A man in a hoodie stared at the floor. Everyone looked like they were carrying something heavy. I walked up to the front desk and told the officer, I need to report financial fraud, identity theft. The officer looked up, took one glance at my face, and nodded like he could already tell this wasn't a casual complaint. He handed me a form and directed me to a side room. I sat down and started writing. Name, address, date of birth, bank account information, timeline. And as I wrote, my hands stopped shaking. My breathing slowed. Not because I felt better, but because I felt focused. There's something about putting betrayal into words on paper that makes it impossible to deny. The moment you write it down, you stop gaslighting yourself. You stop asking, maybe I'm overreacting. You stop wondering if you imagined it. Because the ink doesn't care about family loyalty. The ink only cares about truth. When I finished, a detective came in. She was in her 40s, with tired eyes and a voice that was calm but firm. She introduced herself as Detective Reynolds. She sat across from me and asked the question I had been dreading. Do you know who did this? I hesitated for half a second. Then I said it. Yes. And who is that? My brother, I whispered. Detective Reynolds didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. She didn't give me a lecture about family. She just nodded slowly and said, Okay, tell me about him. So I did. I told her about Evan living with me, about him using my laptop, about the new device login, about the replacement debit card request sent to my mother's address, about the texts. I showed her everything, and the entire time, I kept waiting for the moment where someone would say, Are you sure? Maybe he didn't mean it. But Detective Reynolds didn't say that. She said something else instead. This looks deliberate, she said. Those 3 words hit me like a punch. Because deep down, I had still been clinging to a fragile little fantasy that Evan had made a terrible mistake, that maybe he'd been desperate and panicked and did something stupid. But deliberate meant something else. Deliberate meant premeditated. Deliberate meant he had planned it. Deliberate meant he had looked me in the eye and smiled while he was preparing to destroy me. When I left the station, the sky was already dark. My breath came out in clouds as I walked to my car. The city lights blurred slightly because my eyes were full of tears I refused to let fall. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the steering wheel for a long time before I started the engine. Then my phone buzzed again. A call this time, from my mother. I considered ignoring it, but I answered, because a part of me still wanted her to surprise me, still wanted her to finally say, "I'm on your side." Her voice was sharp the moment she heard mine. "Did you go to the police?" she demanded. I blinked. Not hello. Not are you okay? Not what happened. Just that. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." There was a gasp, like I had slapped her. "Lena, what is wrong with you?" she hissed. "How could you do that to your own brother?" I felt my hands tighten around the phone. "How could I do that?" I repeated. "Yes," she snapped. "You're going to ruin him. You're going to put him in jail. You're going to destroy his future over money." Over money, that phrase again. The way she said it, you would have thought he had borrowed $20 and forgotten to pay it back. My voice came out low and steady. He took my rent. He took my emergency fund. He took everything I have worked for since I was 19. He changed my account settings. He tried to reroute a replacement card to your address. This wasn't a mistake. My mother's breathing turned ragged. I could hear her pacing. "He's scared," she said finally, softer now. "He called me. He said you were overreacting. He said you were trying to punish him because you've always been jealous." Jealous. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it was almost poetic. Jealous of what? Of the way she protected him? Of the way she excused him? Of the way he could destroy me and still be treated like the victim? "I'm not jealous," I said. "I'm done." There was silence, and then my mother said something that made my blood run cold. "He's coming home," she said. "He's going to stay with me until you calm down." I gripped the phone tighter. "Mom," I said slowly, "if you help him hide, you're going to make this worse." "You don't get to threaten me," she snapped. "He's my son." And there it was. The truth I had spent my whole life trying not to see. I wasn't her daughter in the way Evan was her son. I was her support beam, her backup plan, her responsible child. But Evan was her heart. I ended the call with my hands shaking. And as I sat there in the dark car, I realized something terrifying. Evan wasn't just running from me. He was running toward the one person who would protect him, no matter what. My mother. Which meant if I wanted justice, if I wanted my life back, I was going to have to do what I had never done before. I was going to have to stand alone. That night, I didn't go straight upstairs when I got home. I stood outside my apartment building for a long time, staring up at my own windows, thinking about how safe this place used to feel, how it had been my little fortress, my proof that I had built a life without needing anyone, and now it felt like a paper house in a storm. I went inside, locked the door, and sat on my couch with my phone in my lap. Then I opened my notes app and started a timeline. Dates, times, texts, calls, transactions, every detail. Because if my family was going to protect Evan, then I needed something stronger than family. I needed facts. And as I typed, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Just one line. "You should have stayed quiet, Lena." My heart stopped. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, because I knew, in the deepest part of my gut, that Evan hadn't sent that alone. Someone else was with him now. Someone who didn't care about family. Someone who didn't care about consequences. And suddenly, my brother draining my accounts didn't feel like the worst thing that had happened. It felt like the beginning of something much darker. Something that was about to come crashing into my life, whether I was ready or not. I read that message, "You should have stayed quiet, Lena," over and over until the words stopped looking like English and started looking like something carved into stone. For a full minute, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just sat there on my couch with my phone in my hand, feeling my heartbeat thud hard against my ribs. Because it wasn't just the threat itself, it was what it meant. Evan wasn't alone, and whoever was with him didn't speak like family. They spoke like someone who had done this before. I forced myself to breathe slowly, the way I do when a patient is panicking in the clinic, and I need my voice to be the calm in the room. I set my phone down, stood up, and walked through my apartment like I was seeing it for the first time. I checked the locks. I checked the windows. I checked the little chain on the door that I never used because I had always believed I lived in a safe building. Then I sat back down and stared at the walls. This place had been my sanctuary, my proof that I could build a life without leaning on anyone. I had decorated it carefully, soft lighting, clean lines. A few plants I somehow kept alive even when I worked late. It was the kind of home you create when you've spent your whole childhood feeling like you didn't have one. And now my brother had reached into it anyway. Not physically, but spiritually. He had invaded the one space where I had been able to breathe. I picked up my phone again and checked the number the message came from. It wasn't saved. No caller ID name, just digits. I stared at them until my eyes watered. Then I did something I didn't want to do. I called it. It rang twice, then went straight to voicemail. No greeting, no name, just an automated voice telling me the mailbox was full. My skin crawled. I wasn't dealing with Evan's usual mess anymore, the kind where he borrowed money, apologized, cried, promised he'd do better, and then repeated the cycle a month later. This was different. This was calculated. This was organized. And that thought scared me more than the missing money. Because I knew Evan. I knew his flaws. I knew his patterns. He was impulsive, emotional, reckless. He wasn't careful. But whoever sent that message, they were careful. They were watching. I grabbed my laptop and started going through everything again. Emails, bank alerts, password change confirmations. My inbox looked like a battlefield. Dozens of messages from my bank, my credit bureau, my email provider, all time-stamped within minutes of each other. And as I scrolled, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A security notification. Your email forwarding settings were changed. My stomach dropped. I clicked into it and found a forwarding address I didn't recognize. A random string of letters at a free email domain. Someone had been receiving copies of my messages. Not just bank emails. Everything. Work updates. Personal receipts, conversations with friends. My life, quietly copied and sent somewhere else. My hands started shaking again, but this time, it wasn't panic. It was rage. I turned off forwarding immediately. I changed my password again, this time to something long and ugly and impossible to guess. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I made sure every device logged into my accounts was signed out. Then I sat back and stared at the screen, feeling like I was trying to patch holes in a sinking boat with my bare hands. My phone buzzed again. A call. Unknown number. I stared at it, my pulse spiking. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Lena, a man's voice said, low and familiar. My throat tightened. It was Evan. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The sound of his voice felt unreal, like a ghost calling from a place I couldn't reach. And then the anger surged up so fast it made me dizzy. You stole from me, I said, my voice sharp. You drained my accounts. You changed my alerts. You tried to send a replacement card to Mom's house. What is wrong with you? There was a pause. Then he sighed, like I was exhausting him. Can you not do this right now? He said. I actually laughed. A short, disbelieving sound. Not do this right now? Lena, he said again, and his voice softened. That was his trick. He always started hard, then switched to soft when he wanted something. I'm in a situation. I gripped my phone so tightly, my knuckles hurt. A situation? I repeated. You put me in a situation. I have $12. Rent is due. My accounts are frozen. I filed a police report. That last part made him go quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. What? He snapped. You did what? I filed a report, I said, my voice steady now. Because you committed fraud. You stole my money. His breathing turned rough. I could hear movement in the background, wind, maybe, or traffic. You can't do that, he said. You have to undo it. I stared at the wall in front of me, stunned. Undo it. Like I had the power to rewind time and make him not steal from me. You're not sorry, I said quietly. I am sorry, he shot back too quickly. I needed it, okay? I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, I said. You just don't like the ones where you have to suffer. His voice sharpened. You don't understand what's going on. Then explain it, I said. Explain why you emptied every account I have. There was a long silence. And then, in the background, I heard a voice. Not my mother's. Not anyone I recognized. A woman's voice, close to the phone, saying something I couldn't make out. Evan murmured back. Too fast, too low. Then he returned to me. Listen, he said. I'm going to pay it back. I swear. I just need time. Time, that was the word he always used. Time was his favorite currency, because time bought him forgiveness. Time bought him distance. Time bought him the ability to disappear until everyone's anger cooled down. But this time, I didn't soften. I'm not giving you time, I said. His voice snapped again. You're being dramatic. I felt my blood go cold. Dramatic. I had almost lost my home, my security, my stability, and he called me dramatic. Where are you? I asked. You don't need to know, he said quickly. Are you with Mom? I pressed. Another pause. And in that pause, I heard everything. Yes, I said slowly. You're at Mom's. No, he said too fast. I'm not. But he was. I could hear it in the way his voice tightened, in the way he suddenly sounded careful. I could hear the familiar acoustics too, the faint echo of a house with high ceilings, the kind my mother had. My mother's house was the only place Evan ever felt safe enough to lie. You're hiding behind her, I whispered. I'm not hiding, he snapped. I'm staying somewhere until you calm down, because you're acting crazy. I closed my eyes. Crazy. That word wasn't an accident. It was a weapon. It was the same weapon my mother had used my whole life whenever I got too close to the truth, whenever I pointed out unfairness, whenever I refused to be quiet. Crazy, overreacting, dramatic. Those were the words they used to keep me small. I opened my eyes and said, I'm going to say this once. You have 24 hours to return every dollar you took, or I will give the detective everything. The texts, the device logs, the forwarding address, all of it. Evan let out a harsh laugh. You think the police are going to care about this? You think they're going to chase me across state lines because you're mad? I didn't answer right away, because what I wanted to say was, I'm not mad. I'm grieving. I was grieving the brother I thought I had. I was grieving the family I kept trying to earn. But grief doesn't get your money back. Truth does. I'm not mad, I said finally. I'm done. There was another silence. And then Evan's voice dropped, quieter now, almost pleading. Lena, I'm serious. I'm in trouble. I felt my stomach twist. What kind of trouble? I asked, despite myself. He hesitated, and then he said something that made my skin go cold. I owe someone, he whispered, and they're not patient. My mind flashed back to the unknown message. You should have stayed quiet. My heart started pounding. Is that who texted me? I asked. Evan didn't answer. Evan, I said, my voice rising. Is that who texted me? I didn't tell them to, he said quickly. I didn't, Lena. I swear I didn't. But the damage was done. Because it didn't matter whether he told them to or not. He had brought them into my life. He had dragged me into his mess. And now, someone out there knew my name, my number, my accounts, my address. I felt a wave of nausea. Who are they? I demanded. Evan's breathing turned frantic. I can't tell you. You don't understand. If I say anything, a sharp sound cut through the line, like a door slamming. Then the woman's voice again. Clearer this time, hissing something close to the phone. Evan muttered, okay, like a man being controlled. And then he spoke to me again. His voice suddenly different, tight, rushed. I have to go, he said. No, I said. Don't you dare hang up. But he did. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, my entire body buzzing with adrenaline. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I stood up so fast the coffee table rattled. I walked to my window and looked down at the street below. People were walking dogs. A couple was laughing outside a restaurant. A delivery truck passed by. The world looked normal, but my world wasn't. Because now I understood something that made my blood run cold. Evan didn't just steal from me because he was selfish. He stole from me because he was afraid. And whatever he was afraid of was now circling closer. I grabbed my phone and called Detective Reynolds. When she answered, I didn't waste time. "Detective," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "My brother contacted me. He's not just running, he's hiding. And I think someone else is involved. I received a threatening message from an unknown number, and I just heard another person in the background on his call." There was a pause, and then her voice sharpened into professional focus. "Are you safe right now?" she asked. "I'm in my apartment," I said, "doors locked." "Good," she said. "Do not engage with him directly anymore. Save everything. Screenshot every message. If he calls again, don't meet him. Don't agree to anything. And if you feel unsafe, call 911. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I whispered. After I hung up, I sat back down, my hands trembling. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Not a call, a text from Evan. Just one sentence. "If you don't drop this, you're going to get me killed." I stared at the screen, my heart hammering, and for the first time since this started, I felt something worse than betrayal. Fear. Because I realized Evan wasn't just running from consequences anymore. He was running from something that didn't care about consequences at all. And whether I wanted to be part of his disaster or not, my brother had already dragged me into it. I stared at Evan's message, "If you don't drop this, you're going to get me killed," until my eyes started to burn. For a few seconds, my brain refused to accept it. It tried to translate it into something softer, something familiar, something that fit the Evan I had known my whole life. But the words didn't soften. They stayed sharp. And the terrifying part wasn't just that he was afraid. It was that he was blaming me for his fear, the same way he had blamed me for everything else. I set my phone down on the coffee table like it was something dangerous, something that might bite if I held it too long. Then I stood up and paced my apartment, trying to burn off the adrenaline buzzing through my veins. I had spent the last 48 hours swinging between emotions like a pendulum shock: anger, grief, disbelief, numbness. But now there was something else. A cold, heavy certainty. Evan hadn't just stolen from me because he wanted money. He had stolen from me because he needed money fast. Because someone else was squeezing him. And when someone squeezes a person like Evan, they don't squeeze them into becoming better. They squeeze them into becoming worse. I thought about the unknown text I'd received the night before. "You should have stayed quiet, Lena." I thought about the woman's voice in the background of Evan's call, the way it had sounded close, controlling, like she was standing right beside him with her hand on his shoulder. I thought about my mother and how quickly she had jumped to protect him. And suddenly, the shape of it all started to come into focus. Evan had always been reckless, but he wasn't brave. He didn't steal from strangers. He stole from the person he believed would forgive him, me, because deep down, he was certain I would do what I always did: stay quiet, fix it, clean it up. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled some onto the counter. I wiped it up automatically, like muscle memory. Even in crisis, I cleaned. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. Rent was due in less than 24 hours. My accounts were frozen. My credit was locked. I had filed a police report. And my brother was texting me like I was the one holding a gun to his head. I sat back down and picked up my phone again. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notes app and added his new message to the timeline I'd started. Date, time, screenshot, everything. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I called my mother again. Not because I expected her to suddenly become a different person, but because I needed information, and I knew she would have it. She answered immediately. like she'd been waiting for my call. "Lena," she said, her voice tight, "I'm glad you called. You need to stop this." "Is Evan with you?" I asked. A pause. Then she sighed, the sound of a woman who was tired of being inconvenienced. "He's safe," she said. So that was a yes. My stomach twisted. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, "someone threatened me. Someone texted me. And Evan just told me I'm going to get him killed if I don't drop the police report." "What is going on?" There was a moment of silence. And then my mother did what she always did when the truth got too sharp. She tried to dull it. "He's just stressed," she said. "He's been dealing with people." "What people?" I pressed. "I don't know," she snapped. "He won't tell me. He's embarrassed." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly through my nose. "Embarrassed," I repeated. "Mom, he drained my accounts. He stole my identity. He tried to reroute a debit card to your house. And now someone is threatening me. This is not embarrassment. This is danger." My mother's voice softened, and that softness was worse than anger, because softness was how she manipulated. "You always think everything is the worst-case scenario," she murmured. "You've always been anxious, Lena." There it was again. The weapon. The rewriting of reality. I opened my eyes. "Listen to me," I said. "If he's in trouble, he needs to go to the police. If he owes someone, he needs to cooperate. I'm not dropping anything." My mother's breath hitched. "You're going to destroy him," she whispered. "He destroyed me," I said quietly. "And you're helping him." That line landed like a stone. I could hear it in the way she went still. Then, after a long pause, she said something that made my blood run cold. "He's not the only one who's scared," she whispered. "Someone came by the house this evening." My whole body froze. "What do you mean someone came by?" I asked. "A woman," she said, voice trembling now. I didn't see her face clearly. She had her hood up. She knocked like she owned the place. Evan told me not to answer, but I did. I felt a wave of nausea. "Mom," I said slowly. "What did she say?" My mother swallowed audibly. "She asked for him, by name. She said, 'Tell Evan, I'm done waiting.'" My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. "Did you tell her he was there?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. I said I didn't know who that was. She smiled. Not a friendly smile, a cold smile. And then she looked at me and said, "He's not the only one who can lose something." My hands went numb. That sounded like the same voice I had heard on Evan's call. The same kind of threat. And suddenly, Evan's text made sick sense. "If you don't drop this, you're going to get me killed." Because maybe, in his mind, consequences and danger were the same thing. Maybe he couldn't separate police from the people he owed. Maybe he thought everything was closing in at once. "Where is he right now?" I asked, voice sharp. "He's asleep," my mother whispered. "He's been pacing all night. He keeps checking the windows. He won't eat. He looks like a stranger." A part of me wanted to feel pity. But pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. "Mom," I said, "you need to get him out of your house." "What?" she gasped. "You heard me," I said. "If someone is coming to your door, you're not safe. You need to tell him to leave, or you need to call the police yourself." My mother's voice turned defensive immediately. "I'm not calling the police on my own son." "Of course." I almost laughed. "I'm not asking you to betray him," I said. "I'm asking you to protect yourself." There was silence. Then she whispered, "He said you're doing this to punish him." I closed my eyes again, and for a moment, I saw the entire pattern of my life laid out like a road I had been walking blindfolded. Evan hurts someone. Evan panics. Evan cries. Mom protects him. I get blamed for reacting. It was the same story, over and over, just with different stakes. Only this time, the stakes weren't emotional. They were physical. "I'm not punishing him," I said. "I'm protecting myself. And Mom, if you keep hiding him, you're going to get hurt." Her breathing turned shaky. "I can't lose him," she whispered. And there it was, the real truth. She wasn't protecting Evan because she thought he was innocent. She was protecting him because she couldn't survive the shame of admitting what he was. I ended the call after that, because I couldn't keep circling the same drain. I sat on my couch again, staring at the dark window. My apartment building was quiet. The streetlights cast pale yellow stripes across the floor. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed and faded into the distance. I should have been afraid. I was afraid. But underneath the fear, something else was growing. Resolve. I had spent my whole life being the person who swallowed pain to keep the family intact. I had accepted crumbs of love and called it enough. I had let Evan take from me because it was easier than fighting. But now he had taken something different. He had taken my stability, and he had dragged danger to my door. I picked up my phone and texted Detective Reynolds. He's at my mother's house. Someone came by looking for him. A woman. She threatened my mother. Evan says he owes someone and they're not patient. I'm scared. This is escalating. The detective responded a few minutes later. Do not engage with him. Save all messages. If you receive threats, report immediately. If you feel unsafe, call 911. I stared at the message, feeling the weight of it. Do not engage. But how do you not engage when it's your own blood? How do you not engage when your mother is sheltering him and danger is knocking on her door? I didn't sleep much that night either. I lay in bed fully clothed, my phone on the pillow beside me, my ears tuned to every sound in the hallway. Every creak made my heart jump. Every car door outside made my stomach clench. And sometime around 4 a.m., my phone buzzed. A call? Unknown number. My pulse spiked. I stared at it, frozen, remembering the threat text, remembering the woman's voice. I answered. Hello. For a second, there was only breathing. Then a woman spoke, her voice low and smooth, like she was smiling while she talked. Lena Carter, she said. My blood ran cold. Yes, I whispered. You have something that belongs to Evan, she said, and I don't like waiting. My mouth went dry. I don't have anything, I managed. She laughed softly. Don't play dumb. He took from you. That means you're involved, your family. So you can make this easy, or you can make this painful. I couldn't breathe. What do you want? I asked, voice shaking. There was a pause, and then she said something that made my entire body go numb. I want him to stop hiding behind women, she whispered. And I want you to tell him, I'm coming. Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my whole body trembling. Because now I understood. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about power, and my brother had stolen from the wrong people. He had stolen from me, and he had stolen from someone else too. And whatever he had done, whatever he had promised, whatever he had taken, the storm was coming. And in less than 48 hours, Evan was going to call me again. Not with excuses, not with arrogance, but with pure animal terror, screaming, begging. Because the thing he had been running from was finally going to catch him. The moment that woman said my name, Lena Carter, I stopped feeling like I was in a family crisis and started feeling like I was in a completely different kind of story. The kind where people don't argue over forgiveness. The kind where people don't care if you're overreacting. The kind where consequences don't come in the form of hurt feelings or awkward holidays. They come in the form of someone showing up at your door. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, my phone still pressed to my ear even though the call had ended. For a long time, I couldn't move. My body felt like it had turned into stone. My heart was pounding so hard it made my chest ache, but my hands were strangely steady. It was like my fear had crystallized into something sharper, something focused. And in that quiet moment, I realized something that changed everything. Evan wasn't just hiding from me. He was hiding behind me, behind my name, behind my money, behind my mother's house, behind the assumption that I would be the one to absorb the fallout. And if I didn't cut that off immediately, I was going to be the one standing in the blast radius when his world finally exploded. I got up and turned on every light in my apartment. I checked the locks again. I pulled the blinds down. Then I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, my phone beside it, and my fraud paperwork spread out like a courtroom exhibit. I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg my brother for basic decency. I was going to do what I do best. I was going to document. I opened my notes timeline and added everything. The unknown threat text, the call from the woman, the exact words she used. I wrote them down verbatim while they were still fresh, because I knew how quickly your brain tries to soften trauma after the fact. Then I opened a folder on my laptop and started saving screenshots, bank statements, device login notices, email forwarding changes, Evan's texts. I labeled each file with dates and times. I backed them up to a secure cloud drive with a new password. I printed the most important ones and put them in the folder Miss Alvarez had given me. It might sound dramatic, but it wasn't. It was survival. By sunrise, I looked like someone who had been through a storm. My eyes were bloodshot. My hair was pulled into a messy knot. My hands smelled faintly like printer ink. But my mind was clear. I called Detective Reynolds the moment the station opened. When she answered, I didn't try to sound calm. I told her the truth. "Detective," I said, "someone called me last night. A woman. She knew my full name. She threatened me. She said I'm involved because I'm family." There was a pause, and I could hear her typing. "Do you still have the number?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I have the number. I have the exact time of the call." I wrote down everything she said. "Good," she replied. "Email it to me. And Lena, I need you to understand something. This is no longer just a fraud case. If you're receiving threats, we treat that seriously." My stomach tightened. "What should I do?" I asked. Her voice turned firm, the way it had the first night I spoke to her. "Do not contact your brother directly. Do not go to your mother's house. Do not meet anyone. If you see anyone suspicious, call 911. And I want you to consider staying with someone you trust for a few days." I stared at the kitchen wall. I didn't have anyone in Chicago who felt like safe in the way she meant. I had coworkers. I had acquaintances. But the people who were supposed to be my safe place were the ones hiding the man who had caused this. "I'll be careful," I said quietly. "And Lena," she added, softer now, "I know this is hard, but you did the right thing reporting him. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." When I hung up, I sat there with my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee I hadn't even tasted. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. "Please stop. You're putting us all in danger." I stared at it. My jaw clenched. The irony almost made me dizzy. Evan drained my accounts, stole my identity, brought strangers into our lives, and somehow I was still the one being blamed for the danger. I didn't respond. Instead, I called her. She answered on the first ring, voice already trembling. "Lena," she whispered, "I'm scared." For the first time since this started, I believed her. "What happened?" I asked. My mother exhaled shakily. "There was a note on the porch this morning." My skin went cold. "A note?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Just folded paper, no envelope. It was under the welcome mat." My stomach twisted. What did it say? My mother's voice cracked. It said, "Tell Evan. He has one more day." I closed my eyes. One more day. 2 days after he ran. The timeline matched too perfectly. Evan had taken my money, disappeared, and now the people he owed were setting deadlines. And if he didn't pay them, they were going to collect in other ways. "Mom," I said slowly, "where is Evan right now?" "He's here," she whispered. "He's in the guest room. He hasn't slept. He keeps pacing. He keeps saying he made a mistake." I felt my throat tighten. Part of me wanted to scream, "Good, let him feel it." But another part, the part that had once loved him, felt sick, because I could hear the fear in her voice. And for all my mother's failures, I didn't want her hurt. "I need you to listen to me," I said. "You have to call the police. You have to tell them someone is threatening your home." "No," she said immediately, almost panicked. "No, I can't. If I call the police, Evan will. He'll lose everything." "He already has," I said quietly. "He just hasn't admitted it yet." My mother started crying, and the sound was raw and ugly. "He's my son," she whispered. "And I'm your daughter," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But you're not acting like it." The silence that followed was heavy. Then my mother said something that made my stomach drop. He said, "You're doing this because you hate him." I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I don't hate him," I said. I'm just finally seeing him clearly. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my paperwork again. And that's when I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to chase Evan. I wasn't going to beg him. I wasn't going to get pulled into whatever shady mess he had gotten himself into. But I was going to make sure the truth landed in a place where it couldn't be twisted. A place where my mother couldn't rewrite it. A place where Evan couldn't charm his way out. I called Detective Reynolds again. "Detective," I said, "my brother is at my mother's house in Ohio. Someone left a note threatening him. He's in danger, and so is my mother." There was a pause. "Do you have the address?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Okay," she replied. "We can coordinate with local law enforcement there. But Lena, I need you to be prepared. If he's involved with people making threats, this may escalate quickly." My hands tightened around the phone. "I understand," I said. "And Lena," she added, "I want you to think carefully. When he calls again, and he will, he's going to try to manipulate you. He's going to try to make you feel responsible. You are not responsible for his choices." I swallowed hard. "Okay," I whispered. I spent the rest of that day doing something that felt surreal. I prepared like I was going to court. I printed every bank statement. I highlighted the suspicious transactions. I circled the device login timestamps. I created a clean, chronological timeline that showed exactly when Evan stayed with me, when he used my laptop, when he left, and when the theft occurred. I even printed the text messages. "Don't panic. Stop calling the bank. If you don't drop this, you're going to get me killed." Each one looked more chilling on paper than it did on a screen, because paper makes things permanent. And Evan had always lived his life like nothing was permanent. I also did something new, something I'd never done in my life. I called my landlord. My voice shook as I explained the situation. I told him I'd been the victim of fraud, that my accounts were frozen, that I had filed reports, that I could provide documentation. I expected him to be cold. Instead, he surprised me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That sounds awful. Pay what you can now. We'll work out the rest." I sat there holding the phone after the call ended, tears in my eyes. Not because of the rent, because a stranger had shown me more compassion than my own family. By evening, my apartment felt like a war room. Papers on the table, laptop open, phone charged, bags packed in case I needed to leave quickly. And then, around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A call. Unknown number. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at the screen, remembering Detective Reynolds' warning. "He's going to call again. He's going to manipulate you." I answered anyway. "Hello?" For a second, there was silence. Then I heard it. Not Evan's voice. Not the woman's voice. A man's voice, deep and rough, speaking in the background, close to the phone. "Tell her," the man said. Then Evan's voice came through, and it sounded nothing like the Evan I knew. He wasn't smug. He wasn't charming. He wasn't annoyed. He was broken. "Lena," he whispered, and his voice cracked on my name. "Please, you have to help me." And then, suddenly, he started screaming. Not angry screaming, not dramatic screaming, the kind of screaming you hear from someone who has finally realized the door is locked and the fire is already inside the house. "They're here," he shouted. "Oh my God, they're here, Lena. Please." I shot to my feet so fast my chair fell backward. "Evan!" I yelled. "Where are you? What's happening?" But he wasn't listening. He was sobbing and screaming at the same time, words tumbling out in panic. I didn't mean to. I didn't know they'd do this. I swear I didn't. Then I heard a crash, a muffled shout, my mother's voice in the distance, shrill with terror. And then, right before the line went dead, I heard Evan scream one last thing that turned my blood to ice. "They said they're coming for you next." The call ended. I stood there in my apartment, frozen, my phone pressed to my ear, listening to the empty dial tone. My whole body was shaking. My mind was spinning. Because now the story had shifted again. This wasn't just about fraud. This wasn't just about family betrayal. This was about something Evan had done, something bigger, darker, more dangerous than I had imagined. And he had just dragged my name into it. I looked down at the folder of evidence on my kitchen table, the bank statements, the texts, the timeline. And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt determined, because if Evan had brought a storm to my door, then I was going to do what I had never done before. I was going to stop being the person who absorbs the damage. I was going to become the person who ends it, and I knew exactly where to start. For a long time after the call ended, I just stood there, with my phone pressed to my ear, listening to silence, like it might suddenly turn back into my brother's voice. But it didn't. The line was dead. The screen went dark. And my apartment, my quiet, carefully built little sanctuary, felt like it had been invaded by something invisible. Because Evan's last words kept echoing in my head. They said, "They're coming for you next." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the phone down. My heart felt like it was trying to climb out of my chest. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. Not because I was afraid of those people. Not yet. I was crying because I finally understood something I had refused to accept my whole life. My brother didn't just hurt me. He didn't just steal from me. He didn't just ruin my finances. He dragged me into danger and then expected me to save him from it. Even now, even after everything, I wiped my face with the back of my hand, took one shaky breath, and forced myself to do the only thing that made sense. I called 911. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, too calm, too controlled, like someone reading a script. "My brother is in Ohio," I told the operator. "He just called me screaming. I heard crashing. I heard my mother's voice. He said people were there and that they were threatening us. I don't know what's happening, but I think someone needs to check on that house immediately." The operator asked for the address. I gave it. She asked for names. I gave them. She asked if I knew who the intruders were. I didn't. And that answer made my stomach twist, because it meant I was dealing with a faceless threat, a shadow. When I hung up, my apartment felt too quiet. I walked to the window and stared out at the street below. A couple walked past holding hands. Someone laughed. A dog barked. The world looked normal, but my world had tilted. I called Detective Reynolds next. She answered quickly, her voice sharp with focus. "I just got a call from Evan," I said. "He was screaming. There was someone in the background. I heard my mother yelling. Then he said they're coming for me next." Detective Reynolds didn't waste time. "Did you call emergency services in Ohio?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Good," she replied. "Now listen carefully. Do not leave your apartment tonight. Lock your doors. Keep your phone charged. If you receive any more calls, do not engage. And Lena, I need you to tell me everything you heard, every detail." So I did. I described the man's voice in the background, the crash, the panic, the way Evan sounded like an animal caught in a trap. Detective Reynolds was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "This is consistent with someone trying to intimidate him," she said. "Possibly someone he owes money to. Possibly someone involved in the fraud. We're going to treat this as a threat to you as well." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" I asked. "You keep documenting," she said, "and you let law enforcement handle the rest." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the folder of evidence I'd prepared. Bank statements, fraud report, screenshots, timeline. All of it looked so neat and organized, and yet none of it felt like it was enough to stop what was happening. Because this wasn't just numbers anymore. This was my mother screaming in the background of a phone call. This was my brother, sobbing and begging. This was the possibility of strangers in hoodies showing up at a house in Ohio because of something he did. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with every light on, my laptop open, my phone in my hand, and my shoes still on like I might need to run. I kept checking the time. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2. Every time my phone buzzed, my whole body flinched. At 2:36 a.m., I got a text from my mother. Just 3 words. "He's gone, help." My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, and her voice was raw, shaking. "Lena," she sobbed. "Oh my God, Lena." "Mom, what happened?" I demanded. She tried to speak, but her words came out tangled. "There were people," she gasped. "They came, they knocked, and Evan, he told me not to open the door, but I did because I thought it might be the police, and then they pushed past me, and—" "Are you hurt?" I interrupted, my heart hammering. "No," she whispered. "No, I'm okay." "But they took him." My skin went ice cold. "Took him?" I repeated. "They didn't drag him," she said, voice trembling. "They didn't hit him. It was worse. They talked to him like they owned him, like he belonged to them. And Lena, he went with them." My stomach turned, because that meant Evan wasn't just a victim. He was involved. He had gotten himself into something so deep that he didn't even fight when they came to collect. "What did they say?" I asked. My mother inhaled shakily. "The woman, the one with the hood," she looked at me and said, "Tell your daughter to stop playing detective." My hands went numb. They knew about me. They knew I had reported him. They knew I had been documenting. I stared at the wall, my mind racing. "Mom," I said slowly, "did they take anything else? Did they take anything from the house?" My mother hesitated. Then she whispered, "They took his bag." "And, Lena, they took your old photo album." My stomach dropped. "My photo album?" I repeated. "The one with pictures of you and Evan as kids," she whispered. "It was in the hallway closet. I don't know why they took it. I don't know why they—" I felt sick, because suddenly, this wasn't just intimidation. It was psychological. It was a message. They wanted me to know they could reach into my past, into my family, into my identity. They wanted me to feel watched. I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom," I said, voice low, "you need to call the police in your town right now. Tell them everything." She sobbed. "I did. They came. They took a report, but they said because Evan left voluntarily, there's only so much they can do." Of course Evan had found a way to make himself untouchable even in a crisis. Even when he was being taken, he still managed to twist the story. My mother's voice cracked again. "Lena, I didn't know it was this bad." I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "You never know, because you never look." But I didn't, because something had changed inside me. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now, sharper, more focused. Because I realized something. Evan's screaming call wasn't just a breakdown. It was a confession. He had stolen from me because he was trying to pay someone. He had drained my accounts because he thought he could fix his problem quickly and disappear before anyone noticed. But he hadn't fixed it. He had only made it worse. And now the people he owed weren't satisfied with money. They wanted control. They wanted fear. They wanted silence. And my brother had handed them my name like a gift. After I got off the phone with my mother, I sat there staring at my evidence folder, and I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to chase Evan. I wasn't going to negotiate with criminals. I wasn't going to meet anyone in a parking lot or hand over money I didn't have. But I was going to make sure the truth landed in the one place those people couldn't control. The legal system, the paper trail, the official record. I emailed Detective Reynolds everything that same night, screenshots, timelines, the threat text, the unknown number, my mother's statement. I wrote it like a report, not a rant. Dates, times, quotes. And then I did something else. Something that felt like cutting off my own arm. I blocked Evan's number because I finally understood that every time he contacted me, it wasn't because he loved me. It was because he needed me. And the version of love I had been raised to accept love that only existed when I was useful was not love. It was exploitation. The next morning, I received a call from Miss Alvarez at the bank. "Miss Carter," she said, "we have an update on your fraud case." My breath caught. "Yes?" I whispered. "The device that accessed your account," she said, "was traced to an IP address that has been flagged in multiple fraud investigations." I felt my blood run cold. Multiple. This wasn't just Evan being reckless. This wasn't just a brother stealing from his sister. This was bigger. Evan had gotten tangled up with professionals, people who knew how to drain accounts, reroute alerts, erase traces, people who used him like a key to unlock my life. And suddenly, The unknown woman's words made sick sense. You're involved because you're family. Because to them, I wasn't Lena. I was an account number, a resource, a target. I ended the call with the bank and sat in silence, my hands pressed flat against the table. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something, a decision, a line, because now it was clear. Evan wasn't going to save himself. My mother wasn't going to protect me, and those people weren't going to stop just because I asked nicely. So I made a promise to myself right there in my quiet apartment, with my evidence folder open and my coffee going cold beside me. I was done being the family's soft place to land. I was done being the person who got hurt so everyone else could pretend things were fine. If Evan wanted to run, let him run. But I was going to do something he had never expected. I was going to stop him from ever using my name again. And I was going to make sure that when the truth finally came out, it didn't just ruin him, it freed me. After I blocked Evan's number, my apartment went quiet in a way that felt almost unnatural, like the silence was holding its breath. For the first time in days, I wasn't waiting for my phone to light up with his name. I wasn't bracing for another threat. I wasn't being yanked back and forth between rage and fear. But that didn't mean I felt safe. It just meant I had finally accepted something I should have accepted a long time ago. Evan wasn't going to change. Not because he couldn't, because he didn't want to. And the people he had tangled himself up with weren't going to disappear either. They had already proven they could reach into my life with one text message, one phone call, one folded note under my mother's welcome mat. They wanted me to back down. They wanted me quiet. And for most of my life, that would have worked. Because I was trained to keep the peace. I was trained to swallow my anger. I was trained to protect the family image, even when the family was destroying me from the inside. But something had snapped in me the night Evan screamed into my ear. I wasn't the family's safety net anymore. I was the person who was finally going to cut the rope. That morning, I took a personal day from work. I didn't tell my boss the full story, just that I was dealing with an emergency involving identity theft and law enforcement. She didn't ask questions. She just told me to take care of myself. I spent the day doing things I never thought I would have to do because of my own brother. I went to the post office and rented a P.O. box so no mail could be intercepted. I changed every address on every account. I replaced my driver's license. I updated my bank contact details in person. I even called my clinic's HR department and asked them to add an extra layer of verification to my employee profile, just in case. Every call, every form, every signature felt like a piece of my old life being dismantled. But the strangest part was, I didn't feel weak while I was doing it. I felt strong, not the loud, dramatic kind of strength people post about online. The quiet kind. The kind you build when you realize no one is coming to rescue you, so you become your own rescue. Around noon, Detective Reynolds called me. Her voice was brisk, professional, but there was something else in it too, something like cautious optimism. "Lena," she said, "we've coordinated with local law enforcement in Ohio. They've made contact with your mother again." She gave a statement. My stomach tightened. "Is she okay?" I asked. "She's shaken," the detective replied, "but physically unharmed." She confirmed that Evan left with the individuals voluntarily. However, she also provided a description of the woman. I held my breath. "And?" I asked. Detective Reynolds paused. "That description matches a person of interest in a fraud ring operating across multiple states." My skin went cold. Fraud ring. Those words made everything click into place with sick clarity. Evan hadn't just stolen from me like a desperate, selfish brother. He had been used as an entry point, a key. A family member is the perfect tool for people like that. Because banks are trained to flag strangers. They're trained to look for hackers. They're trained to watch for suspicious patterns. But family? Family is trusted by default. Family can sit on your couch. Family can borrow your laptop. Family can watch you type your passwords and pretend it's nothing. Evan wasn't smart enough to orchestrate the level of access and redirection that happened to my accounts. Not on his own. He was reckless, not strategic. But these people, They were strategic. They had taken his desperation and turned it into a weapon. "Do you think he's in danger?" I asked quietly. Detective Reynolds hesitated. "I think he's in over his head. Whether that becomes danger depends on how cooperative he is with them." Cooperative. My stomach twisted. Even now, Evan wasn't a victim in the way I wanted him to be. He was still making choices. He was still aligning himself with the people who hurt others because it benefited him. "Lena," Detective Reynolds continued, "I need you to be prepared for something. There's a possibility your brother will try to contact you again. If he does, do not engage. Notify us immediately." I swallowed hard. I blocked him. "That's good," she said. "But he may use other numbers." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the sunlight spilling across the wood surface, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not because I missed Evan, but because I realized that somewhere, deep inside me, there had always been a small hope that one day my brother would wake up and become someone safe, someone I could trust, someone I could love without fear. And now that hope was dying, not dramatically, quietly, like a candle being snuffed out. In the late afternoon, my bank called again. This time, it wasn't Miss Alvarez. It was a man from the fraud investigations team. His voice was polite, neutral, but firm. "Ms. Carter," he said, "we've completed an initial review of your claim. Based on the evidence you provided, we believe your account access was compromised through social engineering." Social engineering. That phrase sounded clinical, almost harmless, but I understood what it really meant. Someone had used trust as a tool. Someone had used my relationship with my brother to bypass every security wall I thought I had. "And?" I asked, my voice tight. "What does that mean for my money?" He paused. "We are issuing provisional credit for a portion of the funds while the investigation continues. It will not be the full amount immediately, but it should stabilize your account." I exhaled shakily, tears stinging my eyes. Not because it was a happy moment, but because it was relief. For days, I had been living in a state of pure survival: rent, food, bills, fear. And now, for the first time, there was a small foothold, a small piece of ground under my feet. "Thank you," I whispered. "You did the right thing by reporting quickly," he said, "and by documenting. Most people wait. You didn't." After I ended the call, I sat there with my hands wrapped around my coffee mug, staring into the dark liquid like it might give me answers. Then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. For a split second, my whole body went cold. I didn't answer. It rang out. Then a voicemail notification appeared. My heart hammered as I tapped play. At first, there was silence, breathing. Then a voice came through, low, shaky, hoarse. It was Evan. "Lena," he whispered. Please don't hang up if I call again." My stomach clenched. "I know you hate me," he continued. "I know you should, but I'm not safe. I'm not." He swallowed hard, and I could hear the sound of him trying not to cry. "I didn't mean for any of this. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could take the money, pay them, and put it back before you noticed." There it was, the confession. The thing I had suspected from the beginning. He kept talking, voice breaking. "They said if I don't get more, they'll ruin Mom. They'll come after you. They already know where you live. They already know your job." "Lena, I swear to God, I didn't tell them everything. But they're smart. They find things." My skin prickled. He wasn't just confessing. He was handing me another burden, another fear, another responsibility. And the old version of me, the version trained to fix everything, wanted to call him back, wanted to scream at him. Yes, but also wanted to help. But I didn't. Because I finally understood what Detective Reynolds meant. Every time I engaged, Evan used it. Even his fear was a tool. Even his tears were a rope. He wasn't calling because he loved me. He was calling because he wanted me to carry the weight. I deleted the voicemail. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared about the only person Evan had never cared about, me. I forwarded the number and a summary to Detective Reynolds instead. Then I turned my phone off for 10 minutes and sat in silence, forcing myself to breathe. When I turned it back on, there was another message. Not from Evan. From my mother. He's coming back. Please, just talk to him. I stared at it until my vision blurred. My mother still didn't understand. Or maybe she did, and she just couldn't bear the shame of it. Because if she admitted Evan was dangerous, she would have to admit she had protected danger for decades. And that kind of truth destroys people. That night, I sat on my couch with my laptop open and the evidence folder beside me, and I did something I had never done before. I wrote a letter. Not to Evan, to myself. I wrote down everything I had endured since childhood. Every time I was blamed for his mistakes. Every time I was told to forgive. Every time I was told I was too sensitive. Every time my needs were treated like inconvenience. And when I finished, I read it out loud. My voice shook, but the words were clear. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't jealous. I was someone who had been exploited by the people who were supposed to love me. And now, finally, I was choosing myself. 2 days after Evan drained my accounts, he had called screaming. But the real scream wasn't his. The real scream was the one inside me, the one that had been silent for years, the one that had been swallowing betrayal and calling it family. And now that scream had turned into something else. A promise. A boundary. A line in the sand. I didn't know yet how this would end. I didn't know if Evan would be arrested, if the fraud ring would be dismantled, if my mother would ever forgive me for refusing to keep the peace. But I did know one thing with absolute certainty. Evan could never take from me again. Not my money, not my safety, not my life. Because I wasn't invisible anymore. And the moment I stopped being invisible, everything began to change. Some betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people who know your habits, your passwords, your soft spots, and still choose to hurt you anyway. Evan didn't just drain my accounts, he drained my sense of safety, my trust, and the last fragile hope I had that family automatically means protection. And what shocked me most wasn't even the theft. It was the way my mother tried to silence me, the way my brother tried to blame me, and the way fear was used like a leash to keep me obedient. But this story isn't only about loss. It's about the moment you stop being the responsible one who cleans up everyone else's mess. It's about choosing truth over comfort, boundaries over guilt, and survival over family image. Because real love doesn't demand your silence. It doesn't punish you for protecting yourself. If you've ever been the invisible one in your own family, I hope this story reminded you of something important. You are not weak for finally saying enough. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe to Revenge Drama House, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs today.